So every day at my current job, there's a Tamerlane quote that constantly goes through my head. And that is, it is better to be on hand with 10 men than absent with 10,000. And what this refers to is kind of for the first time in my career, everybody else on the team I'm working on is a creative type. They do communications or uh, graphic design or video editing or animation or music or something like that, and then our the management are all big idea guys. They think they're trailblazers, they think they're leaders in the industry. They're people who have very high expectations for themselves and others, and they tell you to just never be satisfied with good enough or to never be satisfied with good. It has to be amazing, it has to be groundbreaking, everything you do. And this is the management attitude I know because I did a course on management for my master's degree last semester. And basically, the entire course was like this: managers have to be idea people, they have to have big ideas, they have to empower their team. They can't be constrained by small thinking, things like budgets, things like what's technically possible, things like timelines. They need to think big. They have to say nothing's impossible. Don't say can't. Say don't say how. Just say will do. Just say yes, like that Jim Carrey movie or whatever it was called, Yes Man. It was like managers who try to focus on targets and completing things on time and efficiency and stuff like that. They're losers, they're downers, they're haters. And that was very much the focus of the course. And that's very much the focus of where I'm working at the moment. And I guess just in terms of my worldview, my personality, and kind of my sense of morality, I just find the situation frequently kind of frustrating. And I think my experience shows what I'd long suspected, that this idea that the idea guy, the creative person, is necessarily the best to put into positions of authority or the best to lead team discussions, I don't think is necessarily always a good thing. Especially not when it's accompanied by an attitude of if anybody says no, if anybody tries to prioritize or look at timelines or look at budget or anything like that, they're the bad guy, they're the downer, and they're dragging the team down. So, in my time working at the new company, I've noticed we almost never actually get things accomplished. What generally happens is we start out a big project, like we're doing a current project and it's we're producing 17 or something different documents, and we had promised that we were going to have them done by mid-September. And as I'm recording this, it's basically the end of November, and we've gotten three of the 17 done. And that was because we kept changing the scope of what we were doing for them. Um, a bunch of other projects just came up, and we abandoned this project to go work on the other projects. And then we didn't finish those either because we jumped on to something else, and any kind of attempt to focus on anything in particular was seen as stifling creativity and stifling the free flow of ideas. And the argument is that theoretically, that first project will be done someday. So we have to start thinking about what the next thing is. And the next project will be done someday. So we have to start thinking about what we're going to do after that, and after that, and after that. And we just need to line up as many projects as possible. So we'll always be busy, even though in a lot of cases the situation could change and none of these future things will even ever happen. But whenever an idea gets proposed, we have to stop everything else, sit down, come up with a plan for the project that might be done in 6 months, and that is the free flow of creative ideas. And so, where we frequently find ourselves in is on an almost daily basis. The people on our team will promise things. Either my manager will, or some of the other team members will promise things that they know they can't deliver on. It's not a case of I'll do my best to get it to you by Friday, but it might be Monday or Tuesday. It's I'll get it to you 100% Friday when you know you won't be able to get it for another 3 weeks. Is often how it is. And I get that this is the corporate world. I get that morality has no place in it. But just personally, I don't like doing stuff like that. I if I say I'm gonna do something, and someone's actually depending on me, and I get maybe this is rich because of some YouTube videos I haven't done, but I want to try to get it to the person. And if I'm not sure, I will say that. I'll say, I will try to get it to you Friday, but if not, could I give it to you Monday? Um, and I normally will deliver it ahead of time, but I try to give like an upper limit to how long it'll take and a lower limit to how long it'll take. It's just important to me to try to be accurate. And the idea that you deliberately just give misinformation just kind of bothers me. And this isn't even like a managing expectations thing where the senior management has completely unrealistic expectations. So you have to play the game too. This is just because you decide to change things completely and restart things like 50 to 60% of the way through a project because you had a better idea and just kind of never get the thing done. And I mean, this is somewhat contextual. It kind of depends a bit on what industry you're in. But without going into too much detail, other parts of the company are very much dependent upon things that we do, things that we make. And because of this whole jumping from idea to idea, never finishing anything, that other parts of the company are actively suffering because like I said, we're 2 months behind and 15 documents short. There's lots of other projects that are like that that keep getting delayed because we want to add in some like super like duper video or add in some fancy technology or stuff like that. And we wind up not giving them a product. Now, the excuse is that I'm being lazy or I'm not being creative or I'm not kind of trying to bring the most value. And I mean, I guess the kind of the way I look at it is okay, so they need these documents. So let's just do a good job on them. Let's do maybe an 8 out of 10 job on them. We'll do them the best we can given our current methodology. And then we'll focus on making the second version of them that has all the additional things. But it's not worth it to hold up the other part of the company that's losing money each and every day that we put this off in pursuit of something that may not even happen. Like I know in some cases it's like, oh, this technology might be developed in like 6 months for now, maybe. So we're just not going to do stuff that's needed in the short term. Or we're going to start work on something based on something that may or may not have, and that's just kind of like what goes on a daily basis. And we just kind of drop things and then do proposals for other stuff. And I just find it very frustrating because I don't really have an issue with new technology. I don't have an issue with being creative. I don't have an issue with changing the way you do things. But I think at a certain point, you just have to say, okay, we're just going to sit down and do this. This is so far past the deadline. Other people are waiting on this. We can't keep gaslighting them and telling them that their impatience is hurting the company or whatever. There's a certain part where you just have to get stuff done. And I don't think there's really anything wrong with that. And the idea that you're some sort of a hater or some sort of a villain if you take that viewpoint is I think kind of ridiculous. And maybe a bunch of people are going to say, "Oh, you're just kind of being a loser here, Argent or something." And I have creative ideas, but to me if the basics don't work, then it's just fucked. So, for instance, when I got hired, the filing system was just completely fucked. So there was literally thousands of files that were in one folder and they weren't labeled. And you had to like go through if you were looking for something in particular and just manually open them all. And the best you could do is look at the date modified and go, "Oh, I think that was when we did this." And that was literally the way that the filing system worked. And I was just like, this is retarded. It's taking like 2 hours to find one thing. I think the goal should be before we do like these 3D computer graphics things or this like other stuff and like this fancy VR. I think we just need a functional file system because people are spending hours going through, and I'm deliberately kind of mixing up what I'm saying, but that's basically what it was like. Was tens of thousands or tens of thousands of files, not in any particular order, not really labeled at all. And I'm just like, look, we're just going to build a basic folder system based on like location, topic, date, and then if people try to find stuff, they'll be able to find it. And it's like that's not valued though, because that's a small idea. That's a little idea. Redoing the way that the PowerPoints are structured so they're much quicker to update, like maybe 50, 60% faster. That's like a detail. And as my manager likes to say, my job isn't to focus on operations or details or how people make their jobs or any of that stuff. It's to come up with ideas, ideas that you guys have to figure out how to deal with. And it's just a very frustrating attitude to me because once again, it's like, okay, I'm all for this kind of creative stuff, but we kind of have to have the basics down. I mean, if you don't have a functional file system, if we don't have basic documents ready, if we can't keep to deadlines, then what's the point of like, and I guess it's maybe just the way that things are selected for these days. Is it's just those things aren't valued by senior management either because it's not flashy, it doesn't fit into the current paradigm. So what they like to see is, oh, we're gonna do this crazy thing that we don't have the capacity to do, we don't have the budget to do, it'll never happen, and we're just gonna pitch this and then it's gonna go nowhere, but we're gonna spend like a week doing a making a presentation for it. And they'll be like, wow, that shows your department is really doing a lot. But if you improve your efficiency dramatically and you're able to actually get work done, that's generally considered to be like a bad thing. That's a sign that you're not innovating. And I've been able to make some like minor strides in trying to force some organization, like schedule, like having a consistent schedule. Like I said, having a proper file system. I know like one of the things, and this is a problem I have with a lot of workplaces, is people don't use the shared drive. So what winds up happening is at like a functional company, like at one place I worked, everything was on the shared network drive. So there was one file at like a location, and if anyone wanted that specific file, the most recent version was always there. If it was updated, it was there. You might have an archive folder that had older versions of it, but the idea was everybody knew where the most recent one is. You didn't have 50,000 versions of a document going around. So people kind of refuse to do that. And so you get into the scenario where to try to add some sense of order to it, people will add a version number to the end. And when you start getting up to like version 30 and like version 31B, you're just kind of fucked. Like, I don't really know at that point what you're supposed to do to keep any of this stuff in any sort of meaningful order. And the truth is, it isn't. I know at one place I previously worked at, one of the executives was obsessed with quantum computing. He's like, "We gotta incorporate quantum computing, Argent. It's the way of the future." And I'm like, "What would we actually use quantum computing for?" And he's like, "I don't like your attitude. We just need quantum computing because it's cool." I'm like, "But we don't do anything that would require it. We don't have the capacity to do anything that would require it. If you have an actual idea of how this would practically help us or a service we could offer a client, then sure, I'm happy to hear about it." But he spent just tons of time and money going to meetings about quantum computing and going on trips to talk about quantum computing and stuff like that. And you know what? None of it went anywhere. But yeah, no quantum computing. They tried to do like we're gonna have biometrics and incorporate all this kind of stuff. And once again, I wound up doing like just hours and hours of research, product demos, people went on trips. None of it actually ever went anywhere. It was just completely speculative. And once again, I mean, if we were actually going to use the stuff, then sure, that sounds cool. But you have to have like an operational plan for these things. You need to have a way, like, it needs to have, like, okay, so there's an issue or there's something you want to make better. You propose a solution and then you think about how you would actually use the solution and then you go ahead. You don't just kind of come up with like ideas of things that would be cool that aren't to address any particular issue or need. Once again, maybe I'm just very like short-sighted or something, but that's just kind of how I tend to find these. So hopefully that made sense. Hopefully you found that kind of interesting. A little bit of a different video than what I often will talk about, but variety is the spice of life.